So here we go. Good afternoon and good evening. As always, my name is Cyrus Gray. I'd like to welcome you to this 8th edition of our program, Elections Central. Today, our main theme of discussion will be law and order, and we'll be trying to school our country, Liberia. As you all know, no true democratic society can triumph without the rule of law applicable to all its citizens. So we're going to be discussing that today. And for that, we have three Liberians, panelists who are legal experts and law enforcement experts. So I'm going to be bringing them over to you a little later and then have them introduce themselves. But before we get into the discussion on law and order, we'll do a quick update of election issues in Liberia. As you may know, the voters registration in Liberia has started already using the biometric system, even though there were some glitches, but that process is going on. As my panelists come in, I will let them cue in on that, on the validity of the use of that system, what exactly is being done, and how it impacts the election. The other thing we're going to talk about a little bit in our intro today is also there are accusations that some contestants or aspirants for positions are buying voters' cards from people as they register. So we'll throw some light on what does that mean. And then there is also a concern about vote trucking. So even though the elections have not started, but vote trucking starts at voters registration, because this is the logic. If you the only place you can vote is the place that you register, and vote trucking is basically an idea where a contestant, realizing that he may not have sufficient persons in a particular locale where he's running, would take people from other places and transport them there to register, and then later to vote for him, which is also illegal, but it's a practice that's going on in Liberia. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. So I like to go backstage to do some housekeeping with my guests, and then we'll come back and begin the program. Again, welcome to Election Central. We'll move right into our program. I'd like to introduce our first guest. It's Councillor James Vaudier. He's the former head. I like to call him the Anti-Corruption Czar. He's the former head of the Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission. So I'm going to bring him up right now. Councillor, can you hear me?
Very loud.
Good. If you can tune your volume down a little bit, we'll be okay, because we're getting some feedback.
Okay. Does it sound better?
Yes, sound much better. Welcome to Election Central. I'm happy that you can join us in these discussions. How are you today?
I'm well. I'm grateful.
Okay, so yeah, go ahead.
No, we're just basically going to say thanks for having me. And I want to greet our Liberian people wherever they are in Liberia, outside. and to wish them a participatory process as we begin the process of voter registration. And we look forward to, if all the goals are marked, all the essential elements for quality, productive, and free and fair elections are met. And then we look forward to a fruitful election.
Okay, my brother. Thanks a lot. So as we wait for the rest of our guests to Uncle Danny, I would like you to participate with me in the introductory topics we want to talk about and bring your the value of your experience and insight to it. So the voters registration process have started already. This process this year is different because they're using biometrics. I've had a lot of people ask me what is what is the deal about biometrics, and I've also had people concerned that in fact this may provide an opportunity for people to cheat during the actual voting process. So I probably would probably need a few minutes to talk about it. So if you can, Vodia, what do you understand that they're doing in terms of biometrics that is different from what we have done before?
I mean, we we have more than I'm getting a lot of feedback. Is it me or
I think it's from you. I don't know because I mean it's quiet here in the studio. Maybe you
I'm
could
in my
tweak.
office
Yeah,
at home?
you could tweak. How high is your volume?
Okay, so I hope you can hear me.
I can hear you, but it's a little husky in the back. Maybe if it's too high, it's sending a back blast. Reduce the volume a little bit. I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. I am hearing the feedback. I hear the echo of my but it's not disturbing the audio. That's, yeah, I'll just proceed.
Yeah, proceed. Let's try. I can hear you. I can understand you too. I know I can hear the little bit of echo in the back though.
We're in the 21st century. As a country, we have to level up development. The issue of biometrics is critical. It makes the process easy and it creates speed to eliminate a lot of duplicity registration. But the biometrics are properly, it then can be exposed to use as well. It can be exposed to a lot of so it's important for our system of government to ensure that all of the different safeguards are met and while the implemented biometrics. There's a unique identification in the biometrics. It's unique and it's not easily transferred. So for those who have experience in it, we need to actually speak and ensure we have all of the equipment and to avoid the manipulation, whereas the processes, and that's very important, So I don't think it's a bad idea, but we need to make sure we put in place all the different safeguards to make sure that this process has the kind of quality of integrity, the credibility, in order for manipulation.
Okay. Now, just for some housekeeping, Voda, do you have a? Are you listening to yourself through a speaker?
No, I'm using a desktop.
So you can hear yourself as you speak?
I'm hearing
So can you reduce that volume of the speaker? Because I think you are talking twice. So you get into the microphone and
if I
then
reduce the voice, then I'm not going to hear you.
yeah, I see. I think that's where the echo is coming from. So if you reduce it a little bit that you can hear, but if you have an earpiece, that would even be better. That would take away that echo because it is you like you're talking twice into your microphone because you're coming back from the speaker.
Okay, so let's go back to the last and come back.
Okay, good.
I will log on to my computer, maybe.
You can take a second and do that. Yeah, I'm waiting for you.
All right.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we'll try to correct that. I think is basically the feedback from the speaker coming back to Vodia into his microphone, but he spelled it out. The biometrics of registration is different from the last sets of registration because the last set of registrations were done manually. So a guy can come to one registration point and register, and then jump somewhere else and register again. I don't know whether they are marking people, but there's a possibility that you can get that ink off your hand and go and register 3 or 4 times. Now, with the biometrics, because everyone has a unique fingerprints. If you are registered using your fingerprints, that means even if you go somewhere else trying to use another name, it will be flagged because that fingerprint will show that in fact the person with this fingerprint has registered already as Mr. A or Mr. B. The thing that we have been told is that even though the biometric registration that's going on, but the voting will be done the same old way, manually. So so the biometric process is to be able to get a more authentic voters roll and reduce or eliminate the possibility of duplication. Once that is done and we have the voters roll, then the elections day will be certain, at least will be assured that those who are coming to vote, whose names will be posted up at that station where they're voting, they're actually a single person and they're going to be voting once. And then there you will show your ID, it gets matched, you get your voting materials, you go and vote with all the other procedures in place. So I hope that clears that out because I have been having conversations with some people who were saying that if we do this thing electronically during the voting period, people could manipulate the computer and all that. So that's not what's going to happen because the voting is not going to be done electronically. It's going to be done the same way manually. But that exercise is ongoing. It started with some glitches, but the Elections Commission is reporting that they're well on the way to complete the first few counties that have been set for biometric voters registration. So we'll see as we wait to get Vodia back. I don't know. I guess he's ready. Vodia, you're back, right?
Yeah, I hope it's better this time.
It is 100% better. The feedback is gone. The other thing is there a way to lighten up that place you are a little bit? You're a little bit dark. We can't see you, my man. I mean, come on, you're a handsome dude.
I don't know what I'm going to do with my lighting. Cyrus, I guess we didn't do a very good housekeeping before the show.
That's okay. That's okay. Yeah, as we go on, we can build up to it. If you can light up a little bit over there, maybe another table lamp, we'll be able to see you better. But the audio is clearer now. It's cool. So as I was saying, so we'll move on to the next issue of concern. There's this report from the Front Page Africa that has our former Speaker Tyler and Senator Situma on the front page. Said there was a clash over buying voters' card. I've always found this fascinating about this. When Robert Sirleaf was running to be senator, this was a big issue, right? So a candidate thinks that he may not be popular in a certain area, so he goes there with money and buys the voters' card from the potential voters, so that they don't vote because they are not going to be voting for him. And I think this report is saying that process is still going on. The exhibit of 7 cards over there. Vodia, you were in Liberia when that Robert Sirleaf senatorial elections were on. You remember the issue of buying voters' cards, right?
Very interesting. What I don't understand is that when these cards are bought, how do these owners of the cards vote? How do these people who have physical possession of those cards, how do they utilize it?
They're not going to utilize that, and that's not the idea. The idea is just to prevent you from voting.
And this is where when we talk about corruption integrity, credibility. Many times, quite often, we point fingers only to public officials, and forget for what citizens do in terms of contributing to such a system. This is clearly something that is within the purview of the individual citizen, and this requires a whole lot of education because it has to do with appreciating the dignity of the human person. You as an individual, you as an individual, you as a voter. Why would I give someone my voting card, my right to vote, to a man because he wants to get $200,000, $500? So, any public official also engaging in such an activity should also be condemned, and pointed out. But we have to make sure that citizens do not contribute to that process as well.
Granted, the first thing that comes to my mind is for a guy to sell his voter's card, is for him to not value the voting process in the first place. But I also know that because the people in the manual voting process were voting twice or had the ability to go down to World Trade Center and reproduce that card, so they could get two cards and sell one of the card to the guy who trying to offer money to take him out of play, and they will still have their card to vote. So there are all these intricacies. Now, what concerns me more are the person who's buying the cards or whose representatives or agents are doing it. This is somebody who is aspiring to be a public official. What's
it's already
mindset? Oh, granted, yeah. I mean, what are their value system in this democracy that you say you preach? So we'll talk a little more about it, but there's a USAID report that I pull up because the other issue is vote trucking. And vote trucking may appear as though trucking doing the voting process, but you can't truck during the voting process if you have not trucked during the registration process. You got that right?
Yeah.
Because people are expected to register where to vote. So, for example, during the last election, I go to Tapeta to give support to one of my cousins who were running there. He's currently a representative. And when I was returning from Tapeta, about midday of the election day, two guys and a lady asked me for a lift to join the Jeep, so I got them in the car. And in a long distance coming back to Monrovia, they convinced me that they were actually rushing back to Monrovia to go and vote. They have voted already in Tapeta, and they were going back to town to vote. So even though they were not being trucked, but they were doing vote trafficking. But the whole concept of vote trucking is this guy looks at a place that he's running, and he figures that maybe the population there is not big. He doesn't have a big appeal, so he goes to downtrodden neighborhoods, probably in Monrovia, where people are looking for money, and say, "Look, guess what? I give you guys $20 a piece, and I will take you and carry you to Grand Jita so you can vote. You can register first, and I will bring you back to vote for me." So before I take your comment on that, I got a chart that the USAID, a project called Leap 3, did a survey on vote trucking. It says awareness and prevention of trucking voters by region. And the coloration shows that, in fact, they came out with a conclusion that about 9% of the votes that are cast are people who were trucked to locations where they do not live. And the big case of the vote trucking is in the darker counties. You see in the second table, there's I think it's Grand Jita and the River G. River G, and a little darker to, is that River G? Yeah, a little darker to, but the southeastern counties, I see Maryland, I see near Maryland, Grand Crew. So those counties that just on the edge of their voting border with this, because there's something peculiar, even though the districts, the political electoral districts are demarcated based on specific numbers, but it's strange that for you to win a district in, for example, District 10, where Yeke Kolba is, you need to poll about 8,000 votes. But there are some districts in the Leeward counties where some people win with just 1,000 vote,
Yeah,
1,000
but
two
it
hundred.
depends on the number of inhabitants, residents in those different places.
Yeah, but
And
I agree. But guess what? If you go to the Article 80 of the Constitution, which I think there's a dispute in the Supreme Court on right now, it says that the legislature is supposed to apportion the the uh, districts based on equal number.
yeah, that's a constitutional provision to make sure that one district is not overpopulated than the other district. It's a way of making sure that people have access to elections, to power, to development, and spreading development, all the thing. So political district are created. But after the legislature passes the law and the district is established by law, you do not have the ability to control movement of those villages. But people leave from one place to another based on different factors, school, economic of economic life, all of that. So people kind of migrate and move from one to the other. But for election purposes, people are supposed to register in the community they live. That is why voters trucking, to some extent, if you have to show support for a candidate and you have to truck people from Monrovia or from another place to another community just for support, that is also wrong. But when that happens, those people are supposed to vote in the district, in the constituency, and register, not to go somewhere else, And so it's tough to control this when the districts are established. It's because, like I said previously, people will move for different reasons. It could be family, it could be economic, it could be political. People will move, but they must be able to vote, register. And people must be prevented from going from one district to the other just to register.
How do you prevent that?
Now that's tough. In other countries, the number of people in a particular constituency are registered, the addresses are certain and all of that. In Liberia, you don't have that. You don't have that luxury to make sure your address can be found, what the number of your house, and all of the other things. That's actually ascertain this address. So people shift from place to place. Now the way to control that is just to make sure that it doesn't matter wherever you are registered. That is just for me. That is just for voting purposes. It is not for districting or voting. Wherever you are registered, you can only vote in that district at that precinct. That should cut it off. People should not be able to vote twice. So if we can control that, it's going to be much better. We can easily detect the results of the election after the votes are cast and all of that. But from what I've experienced and what I've heard, that also has been a problem in Liberia electoral process. That people are having the opportunity or are being aided in voting multiple times.
So we're hoping that the biometrics will curb that. But here's one downside of vote trafficking, right? First thing, the people who are moved to this area to vote just for the purpose of voting, they might influence the election of somebody in that area, and then they leave. And that person's work or the lack thereof affect other people who actually live there when they who voted do not live there. The other thing is the vote trafficking like that is mostly done by people in the legislative election sector. So if a representative takes a guy to Nima, for example, and registers him, getting his pay down, then takes him back to vote, and the elections reach a deadlock where he has to go to a runoff, who's going to take that guy back there to vote? Because the representative is not on the ticket anymore.
The same person. Or else he or she stands a chance of losing.
But the guy not on the ticket anymore, so he's not vested in that process.
Yeah,
So,
those are some of the negatives going, and that is why
we lost your audio of audio. But if you can hear me, we lost your audio for a minute. Ladies and gentlemen, these are some of the challenges that we face as a country in the election process. That also undermines the democratic process and the fair allocation of votes or representation of votes that come from the polling station. So Vodio has a audio problem. As soon as he takes care of that, we'll be right back. But those are the intro issue on elections that are obtaining in Liberia right now. We wanted to talk about it before we get to the main discussion of our topic. There is a last issue. Sometimes 2 weeks ago, the CPP, made out of the Liberty Party and the ANC, filed a petition with the Supreme Court asking that the Supreme Court compel the Elections Commission to halt the current registration process until they reflect the results of the 2022 census in the exercise. So because this is going to court on April 4th, as Tuesday next week, we'll just wait for what obtain the court, the arguments, and then we'll have a discussion about it in our next segment. So for the time being, we'll take a short break as we go back to do some house cleaning with our guests, and we'll be back to discuss our key topic today, law and order in Liberia, the rule of law, an essential element of a functioning democracy. So we'll get back into the our main topic today: law and order in Liberia. The legal system is an essential element of a functioning democracy. I'll, as I said earlier, we have our guest panelists already with us. Uh, the Councillor James Fortier. We're waiting another set of our panelists. Councillor Adolphus Canoa, who is a practicing litigant, one of the lead prosecutors for the Ministry of Justice in criminal cases, and the former Inspector General of Police, Mark Ambler. They're going to be joining us subsequently. So, welcome back. Let me hear you, Vodia.
Yeah, I'm bad.
I'm glad Yeah, we lost your volume a little bit, but we can hear you now. So I wanted us to delve a little bit into the issue of law and order. All right. I've been told the way we present our topics in this program is a little strange because we try to attack concepts uh, from a top level and then bring it back to how it relates to Liberia. And I'm not apologetic about it. So that's why I brought you because you're a legal mind. You're well experienced in things that have happened in Liberia. So what I would like us to do is let's just put a few minutes on why it's important to have that system of law and order, and why it should apply to everybody, including governors. Before we go there, I pull out a comment by a jurist, a member of the U.S. Supreme Court, somewhere in 1928, the Associate Justice Louis Brandeis. And I'm just putting it out there for us to read so we can have a concept that laws are not only for the citizens, they're also for uh, government operatives, for wealthy people, for poor people. And in giving a dissenting opinion in one of the cases that was brought before the Supreme Court, this is what the jurist said. He said, if the government becomes a lawbreaker, it breeds contempt for law. It invites every man to become a law unto himself. It invites anarchy. So on that, Avoria, I would like your view on the concept of laws. You know, if you look in, especially after our civil unrest, the tendency for people to trash regulations and law has become really common. You know, like hey, whatever. What can we do? Nothing happened. I mean, and as a result of that, there have been vigilante justice. You trust people with resources to do something for you, and they can squander it, and they have no remorse. People get arrested for crimes, and you see them back in the street without any process. People get imprisoned for stealing from somebody, and while they're in jail, they are expected, the person who is victimized is expected to carry food for them and all that, right? So, look, with your legal mind and your expertise, give us some reason why laws are important and why they should apply to everybody.
Cyrus, thank you.
Thank you.
Um, our
Our
Liberian
Liberian
society
society
has been
has been
plagued
plagued
with this whole
with this
issue
whole
of
issue of
paper
paper
laws,
laws,
respecting and
respecting
honoring the
and
rule of
honoring the
law,
rule of law,
because
because
this is
this
critical
is
to our
critical to our
democratic process.
democratic process.
Now we
Now
have
we have
decided
decided
to
to
follow a system
follow a
of
system
government
of government
that is
that is
democratic,
democratic,
that is
that is
essentially
essentially
heralded in the
heralded
United
in the
States
United
of
States
America
of America
and other
and other
places.
places.
America is the
America is
default
the
one
default
of
one of
democracy,
democracy,
but
but
we do have
we do
different
have
values.
different values.
American people in
American
other
people and
places
other
said
places said
democracy is
democracy
actually
is actually
flourishing.
flourishing.
Our value
Our value
system
system
many times
many
seem to
times seem
not be
to not be
parallel
parallel
to the
to
value
the
system
value
of places
system
where
where
democracy is
democracy is
thriving.
thriving.
And so
And
that
so
is an
that is
issue.
an issue.
In
In
Liberia,
Liberia,
we kind of
we kind of
ascribe more
ascribe
to
more to
a
a
chieftaincy
chieftaincy
kind of
kind of
lifestyle,
lifestyle,
where
where
someone who has
someone who has
power,
power,
someone who is
someone who
held in
is held in
authority,
authority,
can be
can be
can do no
can do
wrong.
no wrong.
And so
And so
he or she
he or
hasn't
she
been
hasn't
expecting the laws.
the laws.
So
So
until
until
we develop
we
our mind,
mind
our
our
system of
system of
government,
government,
our people,
where people
on that
on
concept,
that concept,
on that way of
that way
thinking,
of thinking,
we continue to
we
struggle
continue to
with
struggle
respect
with
for
this
the rule of
for
law.
rule of law.
Because we
Because
hold
we hold
very
very
importantly
importantly
that
that
all men
all
are
men are
created equal.
created equal,
And there's
and there
something we
is
refer
something
to as
referred to as
equality before the
equality
law.
before the law.
That's a concept
That's
we
a
struggle
concept we
with.
struggle with,
Because just by
because just
walking
by walking
before the law
before
or
the
going to
law or
court,
going to court,
people are
people
already
are
treated
already
differently.
treated.
If you
If
arrest a
you
taxi
arrest a
driver
person driver,
or something and
or
you
something,
bring
and
him
you
in
bring it
with
in
another
with
man who
another
works
man
at the
who works
state
at
of
the
bank,
state of bank,
you get
you
before a
get
judge,
before a judge,
you're treated
you treat it
differently.
differently.
The police
The
or the
police
peace
or the
officer
peace officer
who is
who is
effecting the
effecting
arrest,
the arrest,
whatever that
whether
arrest
that
is about
arrest
to
is
be
about to
effected,
be effective,
treats these people
treat these people
differently
differently
because of social
because of social
status,
status,
because of their
because of their
name,
name,
or because of the
or
place
because
they
of the
work,
place they work,
or because they
or
know
because
that
they
this
know
person
that
has
this
money
person
or
has money or
so our
so our
social
social
justice system
justice system
are always
are
clashing,
always clashing,
and that is our
that is
problem.
our problem.
In
In
Liberia,
Liberia,
we
we
affirm
affirm
our
our
government structure
government structure
with
with
democracy
democracy
and
and
justice.
justice.
And if we must
If we
have
must
that,
have that,
then there must
then
be
there must be
respect,
respect, total respect
for the rule of
for
law.
rule of law.
There must be
There must be
no
no
interference
interference
or higher
or
ups
higher ups
when due
when due
process
process
is
is
undertaken.
undertaken.
You know,
You know,
interference is
interference
something
is
that
something
will
that
disrupt
will
our
disrupt
justice
our
system.
justice system. You know,
Justices or
justices or
judges
judges
should be
should be
friendly,
friendly,
they should be
they should be
firm,
firm,
and they should
and
be
they should be
knowledgeable
knowledgeable
of what the
of what
laws
the
are.
laws are.
You know,
You
and
know,
the
and the
legislature
legislature
should be an
should be an
institution
institution
that will
that will
adopt
adapt
laws or
laws
pass
or
laws
pass laws
that will
that will
address our
address our
everyday
everyday
problems
problems
and not
and
address
not
problems
address
that
problems that
the legislators are
legislators are
facing,
facing,
and
you know, and
to promote their own
promote their own
interests.
interests.
So
So
it's
it's
a huge
a
thing.
huge thing.
It's a
It's a
societal thing. It's not
societal thing.
just
It's
a
not just
it's just not a
it's
single
not a
government
single
issue.
government issue.
It's being
It's
an
been
issue
an
of
issue of
our
our
nation,
nation,
of our
of
common
our common
patrimony.
patrimony.
To address
To
it,
address it,
you gotta
you
start
gotta start
respecting the
respecting the
laws,
laws,
no matter
no
who you
matter who
are,
you are,
no matter where
no
you
matter where
work,
you work,
what
the
office
what
you
office you
occupy.
occupy.
The
The
law
law
is the
is
law.
the law.
And until we
And
get
until
to
we
that
get to
point
that point
where the
where the
laws are not
laws are not
manipulated,
manipulated,
the
the
appointment of
appointment of
judges
judges
are not
are not
controlled,
controlled,
they're based
they're
on
based
merit,
on merit,
we will
we
continue
will
to
continue
struggle
to
with that.
struggle with that.
And there's
There's
so
so
many
many
examples
examples
of
of
what
what
this is
this is
happening.
happening.
So many
So many
examples,
examples,
and
and
our country
our
continue
country
to
continue
struggle
to
with that.
struggle with that.
But to
But
change
to
it,
change it,
we have to
we have
first
to
start
first start
respecting
respecting
ourselves.
ourselves.
We have
We
to
have to
insist
insist
that
that
we are
we are
going to
going
be
to
people
be
of
people of
credibility.
credibility.
We're going to
We're
make
going to make
sure
sure
what the law,
what the
we may
law,
not
we
agree
may
with
not
the
agree
law,
with the law,
we have to
we have to
respect
respect
the
the
law.
law.
That is the
That
thing.
is
We
the
may
thing.
not
We may
agree
not
with the
agree
law,
with the law,
we have to respect the
respect
law.
the law.
We don't
We
only
don't only
respect the
respect
law
the law
when
when
it
it
involves someone
involves someone
else.
else.
We have to
We have
respect
to
the law
respect the
when
law
we
when we
ourselves
ourselves
are
are
involved, are in
involved, are
conflict
in
with the
conflict with
law.
the law.
We have to
We have
respect
to
the law.
respect the law.
So
So
that
that
is my little
my
take
little tip
for what's
for
going
what's
on right
going on
here.
right now. You know, I've never thought about it that way on that social component that you brought in that has to do with our whole concept of the big guy, the chieftaincy concept. Really, it makes a whole lot of sense. Because if you look at our laws, our statute, our ordinances, we have everything on the books that any developed country has relative to our laws. I was talking about you delve a little bit into the institutions, for example, the legislature. Our constitution is designed in such a way that the legislature is made out of representatives of the people, and they promulgate laws, and they also have the ability to oversight the implementation of those laws. If we look keenly at our legislature, we can point on cases that are not even few, many cases of a whole lot of impropriety, where the people who are even making the law themselves are circumventing the law.
Cyrus, let me not interrupt you, but this just came to mind. Let me just flag this. When people are appointed to offices, these public officials hold a single responsibility, not toward the person appointed, the people they serve. It's the country. We're talking about interruption, interference. I'll give you this example. When I was a head of LSCC, we had a situation where people that there was certain transactions going on as one of the business involving the late Mr. Adolf Lawrence and the late Michael Addison. Until you remember that case.
I remember that case, right?
Okay. So we dispatched agents in strategic locations until the transaction actually commenced. So we were able to apprehend Representative Lawrence and Michael Addison. And that also was another thing. Until my ascendancy to NSCC, NSCC had not arrested anybody, especially government officials. NSCC did not arrest anybody. We were waiting to go to court to arrest people. I got there. We used the law. We interpreted the law to mean that NSCC peace officer as agents can arrest people needed. In the commission of crime, we later Representative Lawrence. And we took all of two of them to NSCC office. And they had a very good treatment. So while we were discussing, while he was there, and the amount of money he had, both of them, I received a call. From who? Mr. Ellis Tyler,
Speaker of the House.
Yeah. So I pick up the phone and Speaker Ellis Tyler is on the line. So I pick up the phone and say, how can I help you, sir? And he said to me, "Oh, Councilor, I heard you have Lawrence." I said, "Yes, we do that." He said, "Oh, I want you to move about protection. Please release."
What?
Yeah. And you know what my response was? I said, "Mr. Speaker, my extent for this matter. I'm sorry, I'm not going to." He said, "Excuse me." You heard me clearly. The authority does not expect if Lawrence is arrested, he'll be released with all the due process. And that's what happened. People were scared to put them. But you have to be able to stand up. Individuals who in offices to defend themselves and defend the Liberian people. Nothing happened. We arranged to get Lawrence. The amount of money he had, confiscated, 2,500 were engaged in act, and then we released them. You know, so I just it takes more courage to execute the responsibility when they are faced with these challenges. Not to have to correct it. We have to be professionalism with determination to make a difference.
Yeah, thank you for that. Both Councillor Allison and former Representative Lawrence are deceased right now, both under tragic circumstances. And now, now that we're talking about Allison, something came out again. It again comes back to the rule of law, and we pivot to another situation with the other councillor, Noabo Digi. when Allison died, and there was an issue over his autopsy, the Minister of Justice at the time, I think you were still at LECC, Councillor Sanon, because I think there was an attempt to shift blame for his death to the government or something. But Councillor Sanon had a press conference in which he claimed that, in fact, Marka Allison, the councillor who has been duly licensed to practice law and made a member of the Supreme Court bar, was in fact an impersonation. That he was not Marka Allison, he was a Jamaican who had come to Liberia and worked in the UN system. And somewhere between then, when his contract was over, he managed to work himself to this name Marka Allison and his son, the former Grady Allison. Do you remember that? What came out of that? In fact, what became the established view in spite of the Justice Minister's position on that statement? Or is it true on the rock?
Remember that very well. On the point of correction, Michael Allison was not a councillor of law. He was never admitted to the Supreme Court bar. Yeah. I think he was trying to become a member of the Bar Association, the National Bar Association.
But he was a practicing lawyer.
No, he was not. He was not a practicing lawyer.
So, Warrior.
But that has nothing to do with it.
No. I mean, there's an issue of impropriety here that I wanted us to talk about, because that goes back to our system on how we gave a slap on the wrist to people circumventing the law. The question about the money that Adolf went to receive from him, I think it was a contract awarded to Allison by the legislature to provide legal service. And Allison, apparently they embedded in that payment a kickback that Lawrence went to receive. Was not that the case?
Yeah, it was to provide consultancy, not necessarily legal. And the consultancy was to look at I think the national law they were trying to pass. So he was contracted to provide consultancy to actually review the document they were about to adopt and to help construct it.
I'm losing you again, Vodia, if you can hear me. Well, listen, gentlemen, we're catching some difficulty with Vodia. I know he's going to come back on. Well, this is an exciting discussion about actually the practical application of our law or the lack thereof that we've been going on. That's why I'm happy to have Vodia here, who has been in the driver's seat with the National Election, the Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission, to discuss some of the key cases. But while we wait for him to do his audio, I hope he has picked up on me that audio is not coming to us. While we wait for him to do that, I wanted to proceed to give the infrastructure of the Liberian legal system. Okay, so we discussed the legislature passes the law, but before the legislature, it starts with the people. So under the Constitution, the people by referendum establish a constitution that all other laws and ordinances has to adhere to. So we have that constitution. So even the legislature cannot make any law that will contravene the constitution. Then we come to the legislature. They make statutes. There are cases where they made laws that contravene the constitution, but on our laws, bad laws can suffice unless you challenge it in the Supreme Court and have it thrown out. So there are a few cases where that have been done. So the other group that is also involved with the law is the judiciary. So the role of the judiciary is basically to interpret the laws. What laws have been made, whether be it the constitution or statute, if it comes into discussion and two parties are in dispute, the judiciary interprets what the law really means. But then they also preside over disputes. They also punish violation of the laws. Okay, now how does that system work? That's why our guys are here with us so we can talk about it. How has it worked for us? Then the executive branch of government. The executive branch of government is basically the powerhouse. Their job is to enforce the laws. Okay, so to do that, there are a couple of institutions that have been created for it, some specific to certain rules. For example, the Constitution in Article 90 creates three or mandates the creation of three agencies. And one of those agencies is the Liberian Auditing Commission. So their job is to audit all government spendings and expenditures and government financial papers. You remember on the Ellen, there was a robust auditing commission headed by John Molu. Somewhere down the road, it derailed, and John Molu was removed from there. Today, we don't hear very much about the auditing commission, even though we hear a lot about corruption and impropriety. But also in the same period, the 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 government created and the legislature created another agency called the Internal Audit Agency. I love that agency even more than the Liberian Auditing Commission because the Internal Auditing Agency places auditors in all government institutions on a permanent basis so that instead of waiting for transactions to be done before they are evaluated in an audit, that internal auditor sits in the institution and is expected to review all financial documents before they are executed. Well, I like to to pause a little bit and I'll bring in, before you get tired hearing me, bring in one of our guests. What would say a time zone issue. I hope we can clear that out later. Probably my fault or his, but then now that we have him, I'm glad. I'd like to introduce the former Inspector General of the Liberian National Police, Mr. Mark Ambla. Mark, can you hear me? Well, we lost him again, so we keep waiting. Also waiting for Vodia. He's working on his audio. I mean, I don't know. It's technology and electronics, so stuff come up. So we're talking about two other institutions. First, the LAC, Liberia Auditing Commission, and then now the Internal Auditing Agency, and they're all in place. If you have been following Liberia, a couple of probably a year or so ago, there was this issue about the head of the Internal Auditing Agency, Batiman Inswa, who is alleged to have walked through a loose door on the second floor of his house and dropped to his death. There are lots of stories about that. Some people believe that he didn't do that, that he may have been killed. There are conflicting stories here and there. So why he may have been killed, I don't know. But this is a lingering issue that we still hanging. A great young guy. He was the head of the Internal Auditing Agency. And then we have the LSC, the Internal Auditing Area. Then we have the Public Procurement and Concession Commission, the PPCC. That too has been in the limelight. The PPCC's job is to to review and give approval for all government purchases, all government procurements. As you may know, that the government spending is the biggest area of opportunity for impropriety. So this institution was set up to make sure that certain laws that have been laid out on how you do procurement are followed, whether you need to do a tender to bid for it, to give a fair chance to every potential vendor and all that. There has been a lot of controversy with this group. And we're talking about elections now. When the Elections Commission first announced that they had a water contract to do biometrics, they were at odds with the PPCC. They said that they never gave such an approval and they were not part of the process. So we have that group there also in place, the PPCC. Then we have the Liberian Anti-Corruption Commission. We're fortunate today to have as one of our guests. He's going to be coming back, Vodia. He was head of the LACC for an entire tenure. The LACC job is to prosecute corruption. To what extent the power space relative to the Ministry of Justice has also been in controversy. Initially, they did not have the right to execute arrest. So if they had any issue to believe that somebody was involved in corruption, they were going to seek the Ministry of Justice action to arrest that person. And I think there were problems there. I understand new laws have been passed that gave them arresting powers. Vodia will speak to that most specifically saying he was involved. Then we have the law enforcement agencies. The big one of which I like to talk about, that we see every day, is the police. Their job is to prevent crime, to arrest potential perpetrators, and then the Ministry of Justice, under which the police force has an office of litigation. Their job is, once it has been established that somebody is culpable for a crime, they take that person to court and try to get that person prosecuted. And our third guest, Adolphus Kanoa, is the job he does as the lead litigator. We haven't gotten a signal from him yet, but we're hoping he will come through so we can discuss the entire landscape of the Liberian legal system. And I just said a mouthful about the structure that we have in place, but yet we all know that there's so much that is not working well out there. Practically, there's still proliferation of crime and robbery, there's government corruption and all that. So I got my guys here. I wanted us to talk about it. Already, Vodia have brought in an issue that I never talk about. That, in fact, the conceptualization that we have as a people, our social construct about how we approach wrongdoing, has been one of our challenges. That we have this whole idea that we'll give the big man the benefit of the doubt. Fodia, can you hear me? Hello.
Cyrus, I really don't know what's happening.
Yeah, you just paused out, but that's fine. We'll work with it. Now you're clear. I can hear you. We're working with technology. There are glitches here and there, but as much as we can get ourselves back on, we'll continue the discussions. But I just took a time and went through all the institutional network of our legal system, talking about the executive branch of government, the LAC, the IAA, the PPCC, the LACC, which you were ahead, and then the law enforcement, principally the police, which was headed by our other guest, Mark Ambler, and then the Ministry of Justice Office of Litigation that actually prosecutes alleged crime. Adolphus Kanoa should have been here to deal with that, but we're still expecting him. So let me get Mark Ambler into the fray and give you guys an opportunity to catch up. Mark, welcome, my man. So tell me the truth. What time is it in Monrovia? Mark, can you hear me? What did I say? Something? Maybe
I see
Mike
is
is
going his way.
yeah, he's getting to look like an adult.
Yeah.
But Mike tells me that it is just approaching 8 o'clock in Monrovia. By my calculation, it should be approaching 9 o'clock. That's why he's a little late.
By your calculation,
Yeah, by my calculation, 2 o'clock.
Monrovia should be 4 hours behind.
Yeah, for you're on the East Coast, right?
Yeah.
So Monrovia should be 5 hours behind me. So
Oh yeah, you're on Eastern.
yeah, so by now it should be 1 minute to 9 o'clock. He's saying that it's 1 minute to 8, but Mike lives along the Simple River, so you never know. But as we wait for him, we can proceed with the discussion, right? So I lay out, we have all the institutions in place, to be able to address our issue of law and order, right? We'll talk about the legislature. We have the judiciary that have the power to interpret laws, to punish, to adjudicate disputes, to levy punishment. We have the executive branch, the enforcement arms. We have the LAC, the auditing commission. We have the IAA, the internal audit agency, which I have mentioned that I love because they're sitting in there now.
Keep saying the LAC.
Oh, the GAC. All right. It's called the General Audit Commission, right? Yeah, I may say Liberian Audit Commission, but I mean the GAC. And then we have the PPCC, the Public Procurement Concession Commission, and then we have the LACC, and then we have law enforcement, principally the police, and then the Office of Litigation at the Ministry of Justice. That when someone is alleged to have committed a crime, is expected to prosecute that person in the court. How are these wheels turning? Before you say something about it, let's try Mark Adler again and see how it looks. Inspector, can you hear me?
Yes, I can
Yes,
hear
I
you
can
now,
hear you
Cyrus.
now,
Good
Cyrus.
evening.
Good evening. Good evening, sir. I can hear you too loud and clear. Welcome to Election Central. I have with me our other guest, James Fortier. So I'll give you guys the opportunity to catch up.
No, I'm
What's
sorry.
the
I can hear. Hello?
Hello? Go ahead.
Also, good
Also, good
evening.
evening.
good evening to
Good
you,
evening to
sir?
you, sir.
It's good to see
It's
you
good to
again
see you
after a
again
long
after a
time.
long time. Mike. Mike, if you can hear me, I wanted to ask you a question. What time is it in Monrovia? So that I can be able to calibrate my clock here.
Now it's
Oh,
after
it's after
8.
8. It's just after 8? Wow. I think I made a mistake, but I thought we lost again an hour a week or two ago. Maybe that's where the conflict was. Sorry that we got that mixed up. But we lost
I
about
thought I thought I was the only person having problem with the Wi-Fi and these glitches. But it looks like I've been vindicated. Mine is also struggling to stay on.
I agree, but Mike is a specter for the the man dealing with MTN and Orange, the scratch guy and all that kind of stuff, right?
No man,
No man,
they do have
they
good
do have good
internet service for
internet
those
service for
who do
those
business with
who
Lone
visit
Star
Monster
and Orange.
and Orange.
They have their
They have their
Wi-Fi thing.
Wi-Fi thing.
If you can hear me, I'm sure
I'm sure you.
I'm sure that's
I'm
what
sure
you
that's
have.
what you have. My man, I bought a radio from oh no, that was Leteco, way on the highway in Georgia, and put a pull up and think, my man, sometimes it's super, but most times it's not. I'm the one who would have been working for it instead of it working for me.
Yeah. I
I
mean,
mean,
infrastructure that will
structure that
continue
will
to
continue to
happen.
have everything. Yeah. Okay. So hey, Vodia, while we wait for Amla, he will come out and he will strengthen us on the law enforcement elements. But these structural institutions that we put in place, especially after the war, and I think most of it was copied from other systems, other governments, because of the affiliation now we have in the wider regional and international framework. How have they worked for us? I mean, we have the General Auditing Commission, we have the Internal Audit Agency, we have the PPCC, we have the LACC, we have our police, which has been with us forever. Yet we still have. Look, just last week, the State Department released a human rights report, and most of the same concerns that have been on the table are still resounding, in spite of the fact that we have these institutions. I know you said earlier that we have this mentality, this chieftaincy mentality, but beyond that, uh, what's preventing our institutions from fully functioning and providing that enabling societal environment where there is adherence to the rule of law?
It's
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 there's
now
now
a one
a one
size
size
fits
fits
all
all
kind of
kind of
situation,
situation,
but
but
the
the
problems
problems
the problems
the
go
problems
from
go
one
from
level
one
to the
level to
other.
the other.
And
And
Liberia as a
Liberia as a
nation,
nation,
we
we
have been
have been
fortunate
fortunate
to adapt
to
some
adapt
very,
some
very
very,
good
very
law.
good law.
So, in
So
terms
in
of
terms of
structures,
structures,
the
the
establishment of
establishment of
mechanism
mechanism
to
to
address
address
crime,
crime,
to address
to address
corruption,
corruption,
and other
and
things,
other things,
Liberia
Liberia
is far
is
ahead of
far
many
ahead
other
of many
countries.
other countries.
So, in
So
terms
in
of
terms of
establishing the
establishing the
structure,
structure,
we're good
we're
on the
good on
books.
the board.
That does not
That
mean
does not mean
the best
the
laws.
best laws.
It can be
It can
improved.
be
It
improved.
should be
It should be
improved.
improved.
The
The
laws as
laws
they
as
are
they are
currently
currently
are
are
laws that
laws that
enable
enable
any public
any public
official
official
to
to
address the issue
address
of
the
rule of
issue of
law
rule of law
adequately.
adequately.
Our
Our
problem
problem
has always
has
been
always been
political will
political will
and
and
interference.
interference.
That has
That
always
has
been our
always been our
problem.
problem.
we go ahead and establish institution, and this is look. If, if nobody can say that Ellen Johnson not anything good for Liberia, this is one simple error. She actually scored almost 100% in the era of establishing institution, integrity institution, and building structures that we supposed to follow. You know, by making sure laws were passed, so many other institutions. You know, she did exceptionally well in this area. Now, it's one thing to have the law passed. It's another thing to insist that these laws must be respected. And when we talk about respecting the law, not just for the common people, not just for people who are accused, talking about public officials from the president down to the last civil servant. There are instances in Liberia where all of these institutions, the Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission, the General Auditing Commission, the Financial Intelligence
Yeah, I forgot that other unit. Yeah.
the PPCC, all of these institutions were created not to work singularly, but to work in collaboration along with the police and the executive arm, prosecution arm, and all of that, work in collaboration so that we could do the job. But at the end of the day, these institutions were pitted against each other to the extent that internal audit agencies actually security evidence from GST. GST was unwilling to share it with the internal audit agency. And then internal audit agency were unwilling to provide information to LACC to be able to prosecute. So that was a problem, and you know, most of the time the leaders were responsible for that, you know. And so we have these laws, we have these institutions. They're supposed to be collaborating, they're supposed to be working along with the judiciary and whatever to produce the best result. Hello, are you hearing me? Hello.
Yeah, buddy, I hear you. I just unmuted myself so that I can.
Okay, so I didn't hear any sound, so I want to make sure. So
Yeah, I can hear you.
all of these institutions have specific functions. Some functions are mutually exclusive, you know, but some are intertwined, and so it requires collaboration to get the best results. For example, the law that created the Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission says the commission on its own can initiate its own investigation. So LACC needs not wait for anybody. LACC can initiate its own investigation based on intelligence, based on newspaper report, and what have you. But when LACC initiates an investigation, LACC looks for something to study, either an audit, you know, or a report or what have you. Now, GSC is empowered and funded to provide all of these audits. GSC is supposed to audit every government institution that receives government support annually. So GSC, during my tenure, produced a lot of beautiful reports. So what we were doing at LACC was not going to do our own audit of these public institutions. We're relying on GSC's report to investigate these institutions. So when GSC completed a report and published it and sent us a copy, we launched an investigation where GSC marked the gray areas. It was a very good collaboration. It helped us a lot. The internal audit agency, when created, is an agency that's supposed to conduct internal audit. And the basic thing was to prevent a situation in a particular public corporation from getting to where GSC will come and find a lot of loopholes and find a lot of fraudulent acts. You understand? Internal audit was supposed to investigate internally, do its own audit, and say, look, we found some areas where there should be some correction. We need to improve on this area. We need to stop this and prevent this. So when internal audit does that, our thing was saying, give us that report so that we can come, because LACC was empowered to help institutions establish structures. therefore corruption. So we are supposed to look at your report, internal audit, and see where you have your lapses and where you need to be developed, where you need to be improved, or in the process of preventing fraud and corruption. But we have series of instances where the IAA was reluctant to share its audit report. They were sharing the audit report only with the president of the country. So how do we correct some of these things? And so these institutions are supposed to work together. And many times with all of these institutions we're talking about, there was multiple instances, time and again, instances of interference. Government officials interfering with the process, preventing them from working. I'll give you a simple example. And like I said, this is one place I gave President Saliva a lot of credit. But I think on many occasions, she also acted in ways that undermine the very institution that she established. So that's not helping the situation. You establish institution to work, then give an opportunity to work. For example, there was this institution that came about where these government officials were reported in this anti-corruption body report. They were named for receiving money, bribe, with Vani Shemon, Eric Stahler, and others, receiving bribe to grant, I think, a concession even to one particular company.
B-ball 1, B-ball 2.
Yes, that thing. Clearly an accusation of corruption. So you have an anti-corruption agency. Why don't you allow them to conduct this investigation? No, the president of Liberia went and appointed a committee headed by somebody who was also accused, prosecuted, and jailed in America for corruption, but is now in Liberia, and said this person has the integrity to investigate people independently as compared to the Anti-Corruption Commission. She appointed for Nati Kufa on this committee to investigate this matter. How do you do that? So this angered me so much that I had to confront the president directly. But things happen, and they asked us to cooperate with them and all of that. At the end of the day, what happened? This was just a measure to get at perceived enemies or real enemies. What happened to that case? Almost $97,000, I understand, was expended for that committee, just that committee, that could have been diverted to LSCC, empower LSCC to conduct this investigation. But that single act was a way of undermining your very institution. That's why things don't work in Liberia. Because in certain instances, those who are supposed to respect the law, they also undermine the law. That was a classic, example of how people undermine the laws in Liberia and don't expect the laws to work. And then several other the issue of the Meta Beslo, the Chinese money, that was given in Liberia with the Ministry of Commerce and FPRC was supposed to sell this petroleum product at market value and provide and then establish an escrow account. So they sold, instead of selling the product at market value, they sold it over and above market value. So there was much more money generated from there. And the law also said that when the product is sold, a minimum, it didn't say only $5 million, a minimum of $5 million should be deposited in a government account. So these officials actually collaborated with FPRC and another gas company, headed by this Toure guy in Liberia. What's his name?
Shaka Toure.
Shaka Toure. So they sold the petroleum product above market value and generated a whole lot of money, but only deposited $5 million. So we got this info and we launched an investigation. Also, a part of this process, they were supposed to invest a certain portion of money into the public good, do something that benefit the public and all of it. They didn't do that. So during our investigation, we ended up investigating and decided to prosecute them. one of them. And then once the matter best law was enacted, there was a whole lot of interference on all levels of government. So the cases going to the judiciary, to the courts for prosecution, were also stalled. There was interference. People were prevented from sitting on it, and there's so many things happening. Some unexplainable, happen. So interference with these cases. At the end of the day, the guys from the managing director of APRC, I think, decided to he they decided to go to single trial. They requested individual trial and then waive jury trials. So when they waive jury trial, of course, they submitted themselves just to a judge. And the saying is easier to bribe one person rather than bribing a 12 man. So during that trial, the judge in that case also decided to query LACC on why LACC was bringing this man to court. The judge actually became a defendant in the matter. We reported that matter to the Supreme Court for investigation and to reprimand that judge. Nothing happened. Nothing happened. So these are the kind of very disappointing things that happen in our country. We have the laws, but we don't respect them. So when we don't respect the laws, obviously, where do we go? Chaos, anarchy. That's what we do. You know that the issue of our civil war, where did it come from? People felt disenfranchised, people felt deprived, people felt alienated, people felt disrespected, people felt abused for a long time. And so when people don't respect the law, yes, exactly. You're inviting anarchy in the country. People take the laws into their own hands, and as soon as Liberians, and I'm saying Liberians, I'm talking about for public officials as well as the common citizens, as soon as we begin to conduct ourselves as respecters of the laws, our country will improve. We'll have a stable environment, our economy, the economy will thrive, and people will have trust and confidence in leadership. These things are lacking. We need to re-examine ourselves and commit ourselves to respecting the laws. And like I said before, many times the law may not be good, it may not be perfect. But once that is the law, we are obliged to follow what the law says until that law changes. That is our issue in Liberia, respecting the law.
Fordio did not quite long ago, a Georgia court met a 4-year sentence on Ellen Cochran for some issues around COVID-19, impropriety around COVID-19 money. I don't know whether she's in jail on that. But I'm just bringing that out to ask that when this issue with Ellen Cochran happening at the airport, did it ever reach the level of the LACC?
The Minister of Justice took that matter on its own. And so it was all with the Minister of Justice. It didn't even allow LACC to get near that case. So it was a matter investigated and prosecuted by the Minister of Justice. And again, we talk about interference. In that case, the law establishing the LACC on which it operated at the time, it says that in all matters involving corruption, the Liberian Anti-Corruption Commission will take the lead. It's supposed to investigate and submit its report to the Minister of Justice. That's the only time the Minister of Justice will get involved in the issue of corruption. The LACC submits a case to the Minister of Justice. But the Ellen Cochran thing, I think, was so embarrassing. So the President and the Minister of Justice, along with the Solicitor General, decided to take that on their own as quick as possible. So they took that case immediately, and we called their attention to it, but we investigate. And we're supposed to go to investigation. Yes, you're supposed to, but until we submit a report to you. So again, that is how institutions were pitted against each other. Putting this whole issue of robbery. We're not interested in that. So the Minister of Justice went ahead and investigated that matter. Another situation, the Brandon Samuka case involving this current government. The Minister of Justice right now in Liberia did not receive a copy of his investigation from the LACC. And according to the law, that's why you are happy. Because it was at the brink of our departure, the Minister of Justice had approached me. And I indicated, told the Minister of Justice, yeah, we're working on this report and we're going to get this report to you when we're done with it. But the Minister of Justice at that point in time had some infiltration with LACC. So he got to another commissioner who got a report that was not signed by me. Now, according to the law, any report coming out of LACC should be signed by the executive chairperson, only the executive chairperson. So this Minister of Justice actually got in cahoots with another commissioner who sent him a report that was not signed by me, and they used that report to prosecute Brandon Samuka. You talk about corruption, you talk about interference, you talk about integrity. That's Liberia. How do we change that? We have to start respecting the laws ourselves. We have to start respecting the processes. Under what we refer to as the rule of law and due process. At every stage, that setting benchmarks should be met. We have to make sure that corporate officials, different agents, do not interfere with the process. If at every stage of a due process, there's a place where somebody can act, somebody can intervene. Take, for example, how do you grant clemency to somebody who has not been tried? Somebody has to be tried and convicted before you grant clemency. You can't just be charged and you grant clemency. You enter non consequence, yet not clemency. Clemency is somebody who is found guilty and there is no pardon, for certain reasons. So every stage there's something that should be done that we don't do. And Liberian people don't stay after Parliament. That's why we have all these issues.
We seem to rely, the Liberian society, either two things, either we rely totally on the leaders, or there is a sense of apathy that people just feel that you just can't do nothing about these improprieties. Now, how do we bring that down to actually the day-to-day lives of everybody? I mean, we're discussing big corruption issues at LACC thing here and there, but that's why I hope that Kamala will have been here, because what opportunities are there for people, the ordinary guy, to be able to seek redress in the judicial system and actually get a fair shake?
Oh, you have the opportunity. The laws provide an opportunity. Anybody who is aggrieved has the opportunity to go to court. Rather than taking the law in his own hand by benching and being physically violent. Go and file a lawsuit. But when you get to court, how quick is the court going to assign that case? The courts are assigning cases based on the names that are involved. So someone who is suffering abuse from a bigger person, that I understand one time there was a case involving Senator Milton Tiaje and somebody who was in the car when they asked Senator Tiaje to use his duty-free privileges. So Senator Tiaje is alleged to have used his duty-free privileges. But when the car got to Monrovia, Senator Tiaje refused to give the individual his car. Instead, he asked to use the car for his personal use. Now, that's an issue you don't take to the legislature. You could, but you could file an action against him in court. The law doesn't prevent a sitting senator from being sued, especially when he engages in acts that are not in line with his duties. That's an issue of corruption, but that is also a civil matter. So this guy goes to court, and Senator Tiaje, I understand, is drilling this guy and doesn't want to go to court. I don't know what happened, but this person at the end of the day for a long time was lingering in Monrovia without his car and something like that. And because it was Senator Tiaje who was involved. This same Senator Tiaje was prosecuted by LACC and was found guilty for economic crimes against Liberia. To avoid going to jail, the court gave him, I think, 6 to 7 months to actually pay back 50,000 United States dollars. But he was convicted. So Senator Milton Teje, who is sitting in the Senate right now, is a convict. So what LCC did, got a judgment, wrote the Senate a letter with the judgment that your colleague has been found guilty and he is supposed to go to jail if he doesn't pay $50,000 back to the government revenue in 5 to 6 months, I think. This also constitutes an action on the part of the Senate to either kick him out for being convicted of this crime, economic crime against the country. Nobody acted.
Did he pay the money?
I think 2 days before the deadline expired, he managed to raise the money and pay him. But there was a good opportunity to kick him out of the Senate. They never did. He's sitting there as a convict, a criminal convict.
A criminal convict, yeah.
Yeah. And he was sitting presiding over integrity on the committee that presided over integrity institutions. And you wonder where our country is going. You have Senator Vani Sherman, who's in there right now. He was also indicted, for corruption. You have it sitting down here in the Judiciary Committee.
Yeah, he was indicted in the B-Ball 1, B-Ball 2
yes,
issue, right?
He was indicted for that. Yeah. So it's an issue of the country. It's not just one person. It's not just the government. It's the people. It's how we receive. How the people receive these things. How they relate to people. I'll give you another example. This one, President Eddie Johnson Sirleaf. We indicted Matilda Parker at the NPA for siphoning more than $95,000 from the port and divided it to something else. So she was being tried for corruption. President Sirleaf takes a visit, I think, to the Presbyterian Church for some honoring program. And who is in her delegation? Wookie Parker is walking in with her. She did not need to say anything, but that was a statement. How can you have somebody who is being prosecuted for corruption as part of your delegation when you're visiting people and going to places? The second thing also is the church. The church, as a spiritual and moral institution, is supposed to provide spiritual and moral guidance. How does the church incorporate and honors people who are charged with corruption and being prosecuted for corruption in your country, but the church call you in and honor you as Mother of the Year or this person and this and that? The church. How strong is our moral fabric?
It's as though our
So see what I'm talking? It's not just
institutions
not a problem with teacher. It's the society.
our institutions are apparently perpetuating the impropriety.
The impropriety, they do that. I had also another situation. I'm from the Lutheran Church in Liberia. I go to St. Peter's Lutheran Church. Alex Tyler is on trial also for corruption. For some reason, the youth of St. Peter's Lutheran Church were having some rally, either the choir or the youth department. I was out of the country at the time, and they invited Alex Tyler to St. Peter's Lutheran Church. And Alex Tyler went there and made a contribution to the church, to the youth department, and they accepted that. So when I got back and heard that, I took a stance. It was a big thing. And what the pastor of the church and the bishop of the Lutheran Church at the time, I said, Councilor Vernon would beg you, let us say it would be disrespectful to return this money. Are you kidding me? Yes, because that was my position, return his money. You're the church. You are supposed to set example. That's my own church. And you know the kind of work I'm doing. You're supposed to set example for the people in this country. And I checked with so return the money. He said we're going to show disrespect to the office of the speaker at the time. So these are the kind of experiences we have. And we have a solution where we have both citizens, public officials, head of government at the highest level, contributing to the respect for rule of law. Undermining political institutions or public institutions, and enabling people to commit crimes. Then, for example, people are supposed to declare their assets. That's the law. When you get into office, you're supposed to declare your assets. You have the executive branch, according to the laws, where the executive branch is responsible to guard and ensure that members of the executive branch declare their asset. The judiciary, the legislature, just the same. And you have President Weah saying to the people, "How can I compare this board to? I can't compare this board to declare the asset." What do you expect? And President Weah himself waited for probably two weeks or 3 to the deadline to declare his asset instead of just being the first person to declare. Now, guess what? Since that first declaration, the law says every 3 years you're supposed to declare your asset. Since President Weah and others declared their assets 5 years ago, has anybody said anything about declaring their asset? They supposed to declare their asset every 3 years, and every time somebody's position changes, you're supposed to declare your asset. But tell me who has done it? Nobody. What is LACC doing, as a matter of fact? Since under this current administration of President George Weah, how many cases has the LACC prosecuted? How many cases have they investigated? Those are open questions. Because you and I know
It seems the LACC and the other integrity institutions like the PPCC and all has literally become redundant.
Because that's what the government wanted to be.
Wow.
We want to be able to boast as a government. We have this institution, we have that institution, we have this other institution, but we're not interested in them being functional.
And the schools are the government. I was just talking about last week, the U.S. State Department Human Rights report. There are damning revelations about the corruption, about the judicial system. That's something that interests me more about even prisoners. That people, 2,000 people are being held in a space that was built for 400 persons. In fact, not too long ago, the Minister of Justice, Musa Dane, made an announcement that if nothing is done, that people in the prison system would die from hunger. And it seems that these kinds of stuff do not even alarm people. When the system, when the society reach this level of apathy, is really, really, really dangerous for any growth and development. And that's why we pull back from the statement 1928 made by the Associate Justice Bradius. It literally speaks to that. If a government becomes a lawbreaker, it breeds contempt for law. It invites every man to become a law unto himself. It invites anarchy.
Yeah.
What can we do differently? How can we change this kind of scenario? I know this is a tough question. How do we change this kind of situation for our country?
We just need to first make sure that people don't interfere with the legal process. Allow every institution to do what it's supposed to do. Like we've been saying, let's respect the law. Let's fund these institutions. Look, instead of giving $1.5 million to the First Lady, who has no responsibility, the government should not be handling her responsibility. You know, the First Lady, what project the First Lady is undertaking? The First Lady is supposed to go out and source resources to undertake projects for charity, for humanity, and not to be getting money from government. So you allocate $1.5 million to the first office of the First Lady, and you have the police with no uniform, they don't have vehicles. You have the Morel Central Prison cannot get enough food to feed inmates that are there. You know, they don't have cars to transport them to court. They end up doing what they do. They tie their shirts together, and then they walk from Central Prison all the way to the Temple of Justice. You are supposed to empower this institution to carry on these different functions, the daily functions. Because you are in detention doesn't mean you are not a human being. Every human being has his human dignity should be respected and observed at all times. You know, so it's the government responsibility. That's why we have the social contract. People surrender some of these to government so that you can have a civil authority to take care of this. As you're going to run into anarchy, everybody's going to protect themselves. But instead, you have I think one time the president said everybody is supposed to take their own security in their own hands. I mean,
Let's see if we can get a Mark Ambler if you can hear us. Mark, can you hear us? I see he has his image there. He's telling me, sending me messages that the network is really terrible coming out of there. Mark, let's take another try. Your mic is open. Can you hear us?
I can just barely hear you, Cyrus. The audio quality is terrible, and I'm really not able to follow the show. I don't know. I'm trying all kinds of ways, but it looks like my network connection here is terrible.
Yeah,
Can you hear
somehow
me?
yeah, I can hear you. We can hear you good, but I can figure you're probably not hearing us.
Oh,
So you haven't been following the issues?
oh, no, I haven't been able to follow, but I think your quality is a little bit better now. If you want to repeat the question, I can attempt to answer it.
So we've been generally discussing the legal infrastructure, the challenges we've been facing, how the institutions have not been able to function appropriately. We just left off with Vardia. So Vardia, let me pass it on to you because you are really loaded right now. I think Mark can hear you. Is there anything you want him to comment on as a former police director?
oh, Mark, if he can share his own experiences of how the police as a criminal justice institution has been limited in doing in playing its role, in functioning properly. Because I remember when I was at UNDP,
Check,
I was there as
check.
uh,
Hello?
uh,
Yeah, Mark, can you
Mark,
hear?
you
Can
can
you
hear.
can you hear? Can you hear Vardia?
Yeah, I'm sorry. It appears that the internet is not going to cooperate with me this evening. I'm not getting anything.
So
I'm
so
not
you
getting
can
any
so
good
so Mark
quality in.
Mark, I can hear you clearly. Can you hear me a little bit? I can rephrase the question he was asking.
I can
I
hear
can
him
hear you
too.
a little bit now. Yes.
We're discussing some of the weaknesses in our institutions and why we have not been able to adequately address some of our legal issues. He's saying, coming out of your own experience as Inspector General of the Police, what do you think are some of the major challenges that the police has faced and probably still face in playing that role that it should play as a preventer of crime and enforcer of the law?
If I understood you correctly, I believe your question was, what do I think are the major challenges facing the rule of law in Liberia? Is that what your question
Yeah,
was?
relative to the police, getting the police to do her work properly, what are the major challenges that the police face? We're trying to tap into your personal experience.
I didn't get into that.
Let me repeat that, Mike. What are the major challenges that the police as an institution faces in enforcing the law? Yeah, Voda, you gotta send some data to my man Michael.
I think let me just try to take a stab at the essence of the question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Despite my not being able to understand it 100% clearly, let me take a stab at.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike. You see what I told you about the MTN and Orange, Evodia, and you say, oh, those guys performing super? And you know the beauty of it for the business they're making because they're offering a prepaid service, right? So I paid for $50 worth of airtime, data, and it runs from this point to this point. If doing 80% of that period, I got poor internet service, I don't get reimbursed. I'm expected to pay that $50 again after the time pass. You got it? But they got my money
Yeah,
already.
yeah, and but then they increase your megabytes is based on the amount of money you pay. So if you want to have, I think you want to have some very good strong service, you you got to have more megabytes, and that's one run from maybe when I was there in 2019, I was probably paying like for your phone, paying like $30 monthly every month, and for your Wi-Fi system, I think it was like $175 to have a Wi-Fi, in your home to do that. So it depends. But many times people get frustrated because there's so much disruption or interruption. It's fluctuating. Uh, but sometimes they work very well. I've been able to work in Liberia many times with a good internet system, and it depends on what time of the day. So many times people waited for a night when there's less load on the different systems, and they use that. But again, this is part of our development infrastructures. The internet is another very important thing. I thought before I left, there was this half fiber or half fiber system, cable, whatever they call the system, using going through the ocean. I think one country to the
Yeah.
other. That's
So I
to
understand they're
improve
laying.
the
I understand they're
internet.
laying that.
I don't know what has happened.
I understand they continue to lay that. There's an issue of ownership of what and what, but I know also that the U.S. government through USAID have made a commitment to be able to connect the entire country with internet service. So I don't know the time frame for it, but it's sad that we couldn't get the views from Mark Ambler on these very important issues. We'll keep pushing on it as time goes by so we can talk to the actual players in the field who understand this thing. But Vodia, it's been really good having you here and getting your insight and your experience. So as we get closer to our end time, I really would like you to give us a perspective. How do we address, we are in an election year, with all these issues that we have, with the issue of interference with the lack of political will, how do we frame our elections, the quality of person that we may need, that we begin to whether it's even possible that one person elected president can even change this kind of situation and get us on a different trajectory. What is it we need to do? Because one of the things I think about is that if you expect people to just uh, get straightened up individually and do what's right, it's not likely. Society doesn't work like that. People really follow leads, and the reason why laws are in place is I'll give an example, right? I used to tell the guys I work with, they say, "Oh, we need honest people." I say, "Fine, we need honest people, but what we need more is we need clear systems that hold people accountable when they cross the line." Because even people who we can measure honesty, we can point to one or two things. Everything is susceptible. But if somebody knows for sure, a respectable man knows for sure that if he steals, he's going to be punished for it and disgraced, there is a higher likelihood that he may not steal, vis-a-vis a situation where he thinks he can steal and get away with it. So looking at that, how do we address that within this context of election? Is there a certain quality of leaders that we need, or do we need to go to medicine man? Or I mean, you mentioned even the church that is supposed to be the spiritual guardian of the nation. That has also failed. And when we were going to school, in our time when we were going to college, we have very prominent a religious leader who would call the president to attention. You don't have that anymore. You don't have
No,
that anymore.
because the prelates are accepting political appointment from the president. He also controls them. You have this issue in Liberia where uh, leaders of the church are going against each other now and saying this person is not the quality of church leader he or she is supposed to be. There's an issue with Asa Winker, and his alignment or his closeness to President Weah and the kind of things that he has said. And other church officials are not being courageous enough to call the leader. I mean, talk about separating church from the state. That's one thing. But how can you even go to church in the midst of anarchy? If you don't have a stable political community, a stable political environment, you're not going to be able to watch it. So we all have a responsibility, the church and everybody else, to make sure that our country is safe, our country is peaceful. Now, when you talk about leaders, the leaders are product of the community, the different communities we live in. Can you name me any person in government right now higher up who does not go to church or who is not affiliated with a church or a mosque? But predominantly they're affiliated with churches. They go to churches. Are they held accountable in those churches? What do the pastors and nothing tell these people who are engaged in corruption and nothing when they go to church? All of these people who are in government that are engaged and perceived as being engaged in corruption and perceived as being corrupt are people coming from the very community. So they actually represent the community. Our leadership is a mirror of our environment. The quality of leader we produce tells you where they're coming from. So people see leaders today and they run to them for support. They impose an extra duty on people who have been elected. And because you want to stay there, you make it a responsibility of yours to make sure that you find money to give to these people. So when we go to vote, we're not voting, and this is one area where we need a whole lot of education. And it's going to take time. How does Mamusu all the way in Kwendu village listen to me and say, you know what, you're supposed to vote for the person you like, vote for the person you want, not the person who will come and give you money. And then right after you leave, this man comes and promises her $200, a bag of rice and t-shirt, and say, vote for me, I give you this on the spot. What's she going to do? And this lady is struggling. This is the experience or the situation with the bulk of our people. Unemployment is high. People go out looking for. Now the thing about it is that even people who go to school, they are lingering and wandering in Monrovia and other places without a job. What's of those who didn't go to school? You don't have concessions, big concessions where people are absorbed as laborers and other things and can go to work. Farm to market road are almost non-existent. They're struggling. So people making their farm produce, they can't bring them to sell. So people are faced with a situation where they just cannot produce economically. They're not economically viable. So they tend to do stuff, that they may not ordinarily do when an opportunity comes. So all of those who are involved in election and putting themselves up for election, they actually survive. They thrive on this kind of situation. That's why you have a situation that people buying votes, buying your. How in the world can you give your voter registration card to a man because he gives you $100 or $200? How in the world? That is unheard of. But the people do that in Liberia. So it's not a problem that can be resolved within 4 years or 5 years or within 6 months. It's an evolving problem. It's a problem that has lived with us for a long time. It's just getting worse. It's getting worse under this administration. This administration, the president promised the Liberian people that they will not be spectators. It looks like they're not spectators, but they can't even go to see the game. They're not. They stay home. How much involvement do you have in Liberia's entrepreneurs right now in businesses and all of that? So we have to carve a way in which we can take the economy to the people and make sure that they can participate. This requires a long-term economic plan. We talk about industrialization. We're talking about the health system. We're talking about empowering people, making sure that maybe 2 or 3 persons in a household will be exposed to opportunity to work and earn, and rather than being a beggar. How do we do that? The agricultural sector is a promising area. This is where we need to invest in knowledge so that we put people to work rather than live independent. If people start to work and earn, that dignity, that human dignity will appear again, and people will respect themselves. So our problem is not a one-size-fits-all. It's a multiplicity of issues, very different variables. They have to come together, but we need to tackle them little by little. So if we want to have an election that has credibility and to establish the integrity of election, it's not just what happens on election day. Right now, as we speak, voter registration is one very big area. that will address something that happened on election day. You got to make sure that the voter registration list is credible. There's a lot of integrity associated with that voter registration. How people register, who is registering, and where are they registering. We're going to stop people from having dual voting opportunities. The unique identity should be good enough to stop that. But I don't man the system, so I know there might be many other ways to manipulate the system. But we need to make sure our voter registration, our voter list is sacrosanct. Now, there's the issue of the census. Is that issue resolved? That is an ongoing issue. That issue should be resolved. They either do that census over because everybody has cried against the census. So their census is not as respected and not credible as it should be. So maybe there should be a way where they can do that census or go back to the old census. That I don't know what the solution could be, but you're not going to use a voter roll for 6 years ago, to conduct elections. The Constitution provides that it should be repeated in every given period. So the census is the first thing we need to attack, and that has not been done. We go ahead with voter registration. We need to establish and say this census result is what we're going to use, and it's credible. I think some people are taking into code the ANC. I understand going to code or something like that. I don't know how far that is going right now.
Yeah,
that is something that we need to address.
The court is going to be hearing argument on Tuesday on that issue.
Well, I think what they need to do rather is move is to stop the election commission from going ahead with registration.
That is their request to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, so they should do that because people are supposed to register in their constituents, in their district, in their centers. So put a halt to the registration right now, resolve the census issue, then you go ahead with registration. And we'll start from there.
Okay. Vodia, it's been good to. I wanted to get actually, I was trying to pick your view on as we go into election. What kind of leaders you think will be able to begin to address this issue? Because it doesn't seem to me that we have the the adherence to the institutional framework to be able to begin to solve our problems. What should we be looking for? We look for a leader who will be able to bring industries. Should we address the economic concerns before we address the adherence to law, or what? The other thing on the census that you raised, I wanted us to put some light on it though. So the census, to the extent that the census affects the political system, is relative to the reallocation of districts. But the voting is done on the basis of the actual physical voters registration. So could you throw some light on why you are raising concern about that? Because if the voters registration is done properly, where people register where they are supposed to vote, then it is that same figure, if it's authentic, that will be used in October for the voting purpose. Except that.
Do you know that?
Go ahead.
Do you know that the census could create a solution where new districts could be created?
Yeah, but we don't know that. The fact of the matter is, if the census are used, new districts should be created because the census is almost. The numbers that we have now is almost double the numbers we had in 2000.
So when a new district is created or new districts are created, it will require additional representatives.
Correct. So according to Article 80, the census results should be used by the legislature to make a determination on how numbers will be reallocated to determine whether there's a need for additional districts or not, except that there cannot be more than 100 districts. Fine. They have not done that. Yet we have a constitutional requirement to have an election at this particular date in October.
But the census is also a constitutional requirement, Cyrus. The census is also a constitutional requirement. It should have been conducted at a certain time. So since it was not conducted within the constitutional time frame, you need to adjust everything else. Why you hasten when you have an election when the 17th you're supposed to do before the election was not met?
So one question
you actually creating a solution for problems during the election.
So as soon as you move the elections, what will be the legal basics of the president say by January of next year. Is that something that you adjust also?
But if the information we have election within the given year, you can still have a change of government or inauguration in January. If not, the legislature goes to special session and provide pass a law, to allow for a particular time to do that. It's the Constitution. So Constitution is made by people. People are supposed to do what the Constitution says. So if there is some intervening cause that prevent you from meeting that time frame, constitutional time frame, it can all be adjusted by the legislature to do something. But it has to be justified. It has to be justified.
So let me pick your legal mind too. Now, if you go to the new election laws, right? I think it's chapter 4.13. It says that the Elections Commission cannot use the result of a census to be able to readjust registration and voting unless that census is approved and provided to them within 12 months, not inside of 12 months.
So the census we're talking about right now is not even conducted within 12 months.
Correct.
The provisions were provided to, the results were provided far less than 12 months.
Say 8 months. So it doesn't fall within the threshold. My question is that by virtue of the fact that that law is on the book, does not it appear that the Elections Commission can actually work with the old figures? Because that law is saying that for them to use that figure, the numbers got to be given to them within 12 months. Read the new election law. I will send a copy to you if you don't have it.
I will look at that, but my concern would be, and my comment would be that to do that, the legislature has to pass a law to circumvent that error on the part of the government. Why was the government not able to census and provide report to the election commission 12 months before election day?
Because the census, our constitution, the census should have been done.
Last year.
2018, not last year.
Okay, 2018.
10 years after the last census that was done, 2008.
And so that can be a big issue. But the thing about it is that if we want to make sure we continue on this whole transition process and it stays smooth and is unhindered, I think it's unfair because 10 years now, there have been a lot of growth. People have reached eligibility statuses. The people who were 10 years old before now can vote. If you're using the census result from 10 years ago, you're actually taking away that right to vote from many persons. So my thing would be.
But I think we should get that part clear though, because it doesn't seem to me the census is going to prevent somebody who has reached the voting age from voting, because during the voters registration, those who have reached voting age will be registered to vote.
I agree. But these people would be in certain areas where they could be actually voting in new districts, But I agree. If we just take that, we're allowed them to vote wherever they register, and that's the issue. That's the important thing on the census. It's important for reapportioning numbers of districts and all of that, giving people their franchise. But if you don't have it, you can still go ahead and register and vote. So they vote in the areas in which they register. That can be taken care of. So
how do we? But even if assume we were to go ahead and vote and all that, do you have an idea how we can address this whole lapse in the census? Because the whole issue of lapse in the census is one-sided. It's subjective. Because the legis is saying that the census was correct.
And people have a lot of problems. There's another important thing that you're not mentioning. The census has to do with not just for redistricting purposes or apportioning people in different districts. The census makes a determination of what the population is. And what the population is in each district, every district, different. If you don't have that correct, it can be manipulated during election. Because, say, for example, in District 11, if during the last election you had 10,000 people in District 11 in Moserado County, and 10 years after You do a census, and now the census says there are 14,000 people. That number has doubled. That 14,000 number, even though you don't have 14,000 people in that district, people could use the number during the election process and have people register, and that number could be a portion to a political party. No, normally party in the party that is the government will be a portion to them. It's important to know this. We don't want to see the kind of situation. Remember in 1922 we had voters results where the result of the number of those voters was bigger than the population.
Yeah.
This would be a situation. We need to know the actual population. We need to know how many persons each district.
I agree that the census should be correct, but for the purpose of voting, say assume that, for example, I will give the issue with Grand Crew County that the number literally doubled, right, over the period. And I'm not saying it's right or it's wrong. I know the concerns that have been raised is suspicious, but even if that new number is not represented in the reallocation of districts, the actual registration of people now being even using the biometrics is going to take the data of physical people, and it is those people who are going to vote in October.
It's supposed to.
How can you balloon that number?
It is supposed to take actual people. So you have, I'll just get, and this is just from my head. You have a district, and 7,000 people come and register. The census says you have 8,000 people in that district. So only 7,000 people register. And that's what the profile. But how do we authenticate that you are registering only 7,000 people? Suppose the census committee or whoever doing the registration voter that presents a list or register people of 9,000 people in that district. It will fall within the 10,000 that they just says in that district. Even though 7,000 or less than 7,000 registered, but NET presents a list of 9,000 people registered in that district. How do we verify? It's sort of different biometrics, isn't it? I guess people who just, I don't know what it is, but something is wrong. And these are little get correct or corrected. They're going to present a bigger fraud at the end of the election to be all of these issues. So it's important to make sure that the voter roll that's registered be very credible, respected. And it's going to be inspected too after registration. Present that. But with all our students, how do we verify a voter roll? People will have the same names. Are we going to go and challenge the biometrics? People are supposed to look at the list, the voter roll when it's published, and to confirm what's the process of doing that.
I think the check will be at the actual voting, where at a voting place you have specific numbers and you have your observer there to make sure only those who are called registered people are voting. And make
So
sure
they're supposed to teach us for the system. Is it true that if I register in District 11 in Monterey County with my biometrics taken and everything, and I go to District 2 in Grand County and try to register, I will be rejected?
That is what the biometrics is supposed to do, because your fingerprint should provide a unique identifier. That means you should not be able to register.
So that biometric system is mechanical. Is it connected to the internet? Power.
Yeah. So they got to have
that kind of thing.
Yeah, it got to have a database that stuff coming from in for you to be able to authenticate everything across the country.
Exactly. And we can be assured that it is actually working. There's power, there's electricity, there's internet to working when that thing is functional. We're not sure of any of that.
Those are legitimate concerns.
People can duplicate registration.
You're right.
So
let's see how those are the claims that have been made by the TPP that's before the Supreme Court. So they're going to be arguing it on Tuesday. So we'll follow it up, and we'll come back to our audience and we'll discuss what have come out. But it's good to be able to have these discussions so that we can be able to be certain that this process that we're going to are free, fair, they're credible, and so that the results can be respected. Because if not the case, then we're just leaving a problem that will come back down the road. So, Councillor Vodia, man, I would like you to close up, give us your parting comments, and just to say thanks for coming. Our other two panelists, you could see how they struggle. So we left all the burden on you, but you have really, really worked with us, informed us.
I always do that, Cyrus. I bail you out every now and then.
Yeah, I know. I
You know,
really
but
appreciate it. You-
I would say thank you for having me. I actually like this platform and how you run it. It's very interactive. It's not just question, 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 question. It's a discussion. I think it brings out a lot more than people just responding to specific questions. The issues that you raise are very critical issues. The observations that we make is very critical. I think you should continue. I'll be glad to come on again once you have other panelists where we can discuss and have a cross discussion of these issues. Look forward to doing that. But hey, to the Liberian people, it's about time that we start to understand that we are responsible for moving our own country. And let us start depending on our foreign partners. The Liberians have a tendency to say, oh, something come to happen when they're coming, the government come to get on them, or EU trying to get on them. The people they're not going to just sit down and let this thing happen. They're going to do something. My question always is, what are we doing as Liberians? What are we doing? We are supposed to act because the Constitution gave us that power. The Liberian people are supposed to act. And we can act either by going to court when something happens. We can act when we go to vote by making sure we don't elect criminals in and people who have not served us right. We can act by assembling at every given time to petition our leaders. We got so many ways to act. They say the power is inherent in the people, and that's us. There are different times where we're supposed to act. Election is just one of them. The courtrooms is one of them. We got to challenge the court every time to make sure they do what they got to do. Having protests and rallying is another way, in a peaceful manner as well. So we have to take the administration, the governance of our country in our own hands, rather than relying on people to do that. When people see you do something, they know that you're determined to change your situation. They are encouraged. They are moved to come and help. But we have to do for ourselves what we should be doing rather than rely on the international community to do that for us. Take, for example, we have a group of Liberian former public officials who were sanctioned on the U.S. Magnitsky Act. They've been sanctioned by the U.S. government. What is happening to them right now? For corruption. What is happening to them right now? I understand that 2 or 3 of those people are also thinking about contesting elections. And the Liberian people are gathering around them. I mean, how do you encourage people to come and help you? What are we doing about them? You got to hold your government to the fire. What has happened to all of those different unsolved murders in Liberia? Where are the reports? Who has been prosecuted? All of the auditors, those auditors who were killed, who are those who are responsible for them? Are they in jail? Are they being arrested? Is there a trial? Michael Innes and Ifti Lama and other people. What has happened to them? What happened to Ambassador Tubble murder? What's happening? Liberians, we are supposed to be acting. We should insist that we see a trial or we get a report that says this is what happened. It must be a report that is reasonable, that is conscionable, and that is legal. What has happened to that? And we're sitting down and saying we're suffering in Liberia. We have to get off our behinds and actually act if we want to have a country that is stable, a country that is respected, and a country that provides opportunity for us to thrive as human beings. Look at the situation. People coming from Rowersfield.
Ladies and gentlemen, it seems we've lost the audio from our Council of Warrior again. I mean, he couldn't have said it better. I'm very glad that we've had him on the show. Thanks also for joining us today. I wish he can come back and close up. It seems he's still at pause, and very soon you'll realize that. But I think even though we didn't have the two other panelists join us because of technical issues, but I'm glad that we had the former head of the Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission, the Councillor James Vaudier, with us, admonishing us. The issue of rule of law is really essential for any country to thrive. I will close on that. Thank you. Have a good rest of your Sunday. This has been the 8th edition of Election Central.
Deep in my heart, I do believe someday we'll all be free. Someday we'll all be free. I may not know how long 'twill be. Someday we'll all be free. Someday we'll all be free. Someday we'll all be free. Hold on, my brother, give me your hand. Someday we'll all be free. Someday we'll all be free. Learning to love, we'll find our way. Someday we'll all be free. Someday we'll all be free. Someday we'll all be free. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday.
Councilor Vodio, thanks a lot for coming, man. Thanks for joining us. I know you were in the middle of thought and you got cut off, but thanks a lot. I think it was a good program. We're just about rounding up. So if there's anything that you didn't finish up, at least you got a minute you can close up.
Man, I'm basically just trying to say it's time for Liberian people to stand up for themselves and stop relying on other people to do for them what they should be able to do for themselves. You know, this is one opportunity to start that. This coming election, elect people who you know will do much better than what the current leadership is doing. Because this leadership has failed the Liberian people. You know, I've refrained from saying exactly what kind of leader we're looking for right now because I remember in 2004, 2005, I became notorious for criticizing George Weah as being incompetent. And several years after he finally got elected because he was popular. And this is the quality of leadership he has brought to our country. This has vindicated me, actually. His performance has vindicated me. Because I said it way back, long time ago before he contested his first election and lost to President Edison. And then the second one also he was vice presidential candidate and lost. Third time, he was able to win. I think it is the most situation where a popular president has not utilized the currency, the mandate, that he received, popular mandate, even though that mandate is also questionable, but he was elected. I thought he would use his popularity to rally the support of the citizens and professionals around him to produce, the quality of government we need. Unfortunately, that's not happening. It's very disappointing. So Liberian people should learn from this and know that we just don't vote on our emotions. We should vote based on individuals who have been able to prove themselves as leaders. I don't think this administration deserves a second chance or a second opportunity. So we need to actually change the trajectory where we go from there. This is the time where we rebound and come back and move forward. So thank you for the opportunity. I assure you that will be available for much more discussion. What we had today, the opportunity available itself. We'd like to join others too and have a cross-section discussion on issues in Liberia. Wish you luck in the show, and let's collaborate, let's interact whenever time provides the opportunity to do so. Thank you very much.
Appreciate that, my brother. Appreciate that. But rest assured, I know you're all there. We all share the same sentiments, so we'll get together and build a critical mass so that we can address some of the challenges of our country. Thank you very much, and have a good Sunday.
Okay, you do the same. Bye-bye.
I do believe someday we'll all be free. Someday we'll